Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, e buonasera, Lazio world. Welcome to our post-season recap podcast. I'm your host, Sean McIntosh, joined mostly, a lot of times, Caleb Adams.
Most.
How you doing, Caleb?
I'm doing good. I had a long day. I've driven 9 hours today for work, but it's been good. It's been a good day. Productive.
Well, it's a day chock full of rumors as we officially hit silly season in the Mercato. It's another coaching carousel in Serie A. Lazio right in the thick of things. Another season that we find ourselves seeking a new manager. Not a ton of player rumors. Again, the heavy focus on manager, which is the first major domino to fall. We'll be here, of course, to chat about that. The moment we hear some definite news, we'll have your instant reaction pods dissecting the new manager appointment when it happens. A lot of rumors. We may touch on some of that in this podcast, but we're here to look back on the crazy season that was the 2024-25 Serie A Campionato, Lazio specific here. Lots to dive into, some crazy predictions we had before this whole thing even started. We'll get to laugh at ourselves at how dead wrong we were. Maybe a few things we got right. But Caleb, we've now had about a week to stomach what we saw in that final match day, sit with the results that ultimately see us without Europe next year. Really disappointing performance against Lecce to really bookend this season. So how are you feeling now that you've had a chance to breathe and give me, on a scale of 1 to 10, your rating for this Lazio season?
I think I had some time to process, about a week. Yeah, I mean, it felt very much like a season of two halves. The first half of the season, I was flying. I think we all were. We just didn't expect the team to come out and swing the way that it did. Tavares was freaking the best left back in the world at one point. So it really felt just like we had some pretty nice highs, top in the Europa League, and then it just all came crashing down and left a bitter taste in all of our mouths. And so I just think when you look at it from the front to the end portion, I probably got to give the season. Are we rating this on how we're feeling about the season, or like the assessment of the season?
The assessment, right? We had our instant reactions. This is like an honest. You sit back, you evaluate everything. What's it come down to you?
For me, it's got to be like I'm gonna say a 4 out of 10.
Ooh, wow, harsh. Okay,
a 4 out of 10 season.
Yeah. Well, we can go back and forth.
I thought I was being kind.
I'm shocked. I'm honest. I'm shocked. I thought I was going to be the harsh one here today. I gave it a 6. And I really thought you were going to give it a 7.
For me, when I see that, I'm thinking 5 is average, 6 is a little bit above average, decent, and then I look at 4 as like below average.
Okay, so maybe we're rating it the same. We're just using a different number. Here's how I look at it, like you would in the school system here in the U.S. A 6 out of 10, that's a 60%.
Okay,
that's a D.
I got
right.
You.
A C is a 70%. Like looks like pretty positive, right? So I rate it below average. It's not a C. This is a D. This is very near failing. As for me, you said it was a tale of two seasons. My goodness, you brought back what seems to be memories from a lifetime. Nuno Tavares, the best left back in Europe. I remember tweeting that myself. I remember getting texts from friends that were like, who is this guy? Incredible, right? ESPN FC, maybe the worst soccer account in all of football Twitter, talking about Nuno Tavares, right? Like it's got to be, you got to be really good and kind of in your face obvious for anybody to on ESPN to talk about you. And Nuno Tavares was there. And so it's I don't know. It seems like a lifetime ago. Boy, do I wish they handed out hardware, silverware for top of the table in Europa. Can we get a supporter shield for that?
Go to the Liga MX format. What's what they do? They have 2 championships. First half and second half.
That first half, we felt so good. It again seems like a lifetime ago, and perhaps that stark contrast is what ultimately gave us that bitter feeling. But it also is what salvages this for me from being a 3 or a 4. What I find particularly
100%.
interesting about this season is while, it's interesting because you asked me the question, like, are we taking like the emotion, the feel? Is this how we feel? Or look, you can't separate the feeling from it. Like, I know what I saw and I know what I felt. And it sucked. Like, it sucked. Not winning a home match, but once against a Monza in the second half of the season. That is horrible. Historically bad. But when I started to peel back some of the statistics and took a look at it and was like, I don't know, man. Some of the numbers didn't add up to what I was feeling. So I know you had shown some of the statistics, like the goal scoring. We were one of the top goal scoring sides in Serie A. Yep. It blew my mind. I remember, challenging you on that and going, oh, that must have all come in the first half of the season. And so I did a little manual counting. I sat there and I went in old school tallies, went to every single match, tallied a goal for, a goal against, split the season in half. First half of the season, we scored 33 goals. Second half, 27. So there was a dip, but not a catastrophic dip.
So say that again. So for the first half we
scored 33 goals.
Okay. Second half,
we scored 27.
Okay. Yeah.
However, so obviously a dip. However, first half we conceded 28 goals. Second half we only conceded 22. So while
we conceded less goals in the second half.
Isn't that crazy? So
wow,
something just didn't add up, because again, looking at the numbers, it would suggest fairly consistent play, but I'll be damned with the numbers because I know what I saw, and and there were some matches where we either scored or ran up to score ourselves on a Monza, also just getting thumped by Bologna and Inter. But there was a lot missing from this side, and perhaps we were not as good as that first half suggested, but maybe we weren't as bad as that second half felt either.
Yeah.
So for me, 6 out of 10. It definitely was not a success. The first half showed that we were a much better side and could have been a much better side. And ultimately, walking away without silverware isn't a catastrophic failure, right? We've been without silverware before. But for me, not getting to the semifinals in Europa, knowing the road that we had, was a failure, was very, very disappointing. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's the reason those feelings felt so intense in the second half, is because despite our issues, and keep in mind, we were waxing every team in Europa for the most part. So in addition to, we got some losses that first half, some games we probably should have won, some games we were robbed in from the refereeing. I think part of the reason the highs felt so high was like we knew midweek we just get a jump. I was like, yeah, easy dub, next league game, right? So I think that also adds to sort of those really positive, trending upward emotions that we got from the first half. It wasn't just league play we were doing pretty good in. We were excellent in Europa League. So those two combined, if we felt great coming in January, I was riding high.
Yeah, and our friend Adrian Trito comments in on YouTube saying the common theme was we could not play well against the big teams, and that is entirely true when it came to Serie A. And what made this side so frustrating is that in Europa, against a number of big sides, we not only saw the results, but we performed in big ways. I'm talking about 3-1 Ajax, 3-1 against Real Sociedad, beating Porto handedly. It was only 2-1, but we were very clearly the better side. These are some of the top clubs in their respective leagues, very respected clubs that have brought in silverware, all but recent. And so it made it really frustrating when you take a look at Serie A. Not only did we become a side that couldn't play in the big matches against the big clubs, but we still also had our slip-ups against the likes of Parma, against the likes of Venezia, against a Lecce, Udinese.
Yeah.
And that makes it a disaster, right? It wasn't as if we handled business and then, damn it, this year we couldn't beat the big sides. It was both.
Well, the problem here was we couldn't beat the big sides, but we also didn't beat the smaller sides. We draw against them. If you're not beating the big teams, you have to be getting 3 points against smaller sides. And we drew far too many of those matches, particularly in the second half of the season. I believe we drew 9 times.
Yeah, those draws have to come against the big sides that you are battling positions for. If it's a stalemate and neither side is pulling away from each other, that's one thing. But to drop those points and to draw against those lesser sides ultimately is what saw us, drop out of Europe. So, Caleb, let's jump into some of these predictions and that we had last season, and we'll dive into some of our accolades and award winners for this year. But let's go into some of these predictions, and it'll open up the doors for some of the stats that we want to talk about and how players ultimately performed this year. But we'll start with a pretty important one. Going into this season, it was a new era of Lazio, particularly at that forward position. 8 years with Ciro Immobile, our capocannoniere, our captain, a European Golden Shoe winner, the legend that was Ciro. Moving on to Besiktas, went on to have a very solid season individually for them. And it was the handing off, the mantle being passed to Tati Castellanos, Dia, a captain's armband to Zaccagni, a new era of forwards with Isaacson, new signings like Chauna, Noslin. We started the season with some predictions. First and foremost, leading goal scorer. You and I had our predictions. You had predicted Tati to lead the side in goals with 14 goals. I had a prediction of Dia with 10. Ultimately, both of those predictions fairly close, but both slightly off the mark. The leading goal scorer was Tati, joint leading goal scorer with Pedro with 10 goals.
Crazy.
No
one would have predicted that. That's
absolutely
crazy.
Absolutely not. Buladia right behind them, though, at 9. So I was only off the mark by 1 goal. But technically, you take that one with the prediction for Tati just barely. Again, Pedro. It took a whole heck of a lot of misses from Tati. Let's talk a little bit about these performances from this attack this season. What was your overall thoughts about our goal scoring unit?
Yeah, early in the season, I think one thing that I'm going to talk about what I enjoyed from our attack and what I didn't enjoy. One thing that I enjoyed, particularly early in the season, and even a trend throughout the season itself is, and this is maybe not just an attack thing, but just a team wide thing, is the spread of goals. Our goal spread was spread like quite a bit between three attackers. Tati had 10 goals, 3 assists. Zaccagni had 8 goals, 6 assists. Dia had 9 goals, 3 assists. So all three together, you're coming a little bit short of 30 goals between the three of them, and you have about 12 assists between the three of them. So for me, it felt like we were a proper team. And I said this in particular in the first half of the season, is this attack feels like a team. It feels like we don't have to rely on a particular player to bail us out, or we need a moment of magic from Alberto, or Cheeto just needs to get that one chance. It felt like, okay, if Tati doesn't score, we still got Dia, still got Zaccagni, Isaac San Pedro, Nelson, some of our subs can come in and put in some goals. And so one thing I enjoyed was that sort of we weren't so reliant on one player. At the same time, though, none of our players are particularly spectacular, right? Like, even though we had a nice spread, I think one of the constant things we found throughout the season was, who's going to step up? Where's the quality? Who is that guy who's going to have that killer touch, despite the flaws of, Alberto on defense and Felipe, Anderson and Chiro Immobile, all these guys. We used to have guys that were like, okay, if we needed some clutch moments, they could pull it out. I didn't really feel that way with anyone this season, apart from maybe a small stretch from Zaccagni, where it really felt like he was doing everything to get us in games. So that's kind of my analysis on there. I would say the weakest link by far is Isaacson, in my opinion. We thought he was getting better, but I do think Isaacson's a player that I don't see how he becomes an above average player in this league. I think he's a very average Serie A player. Great for rotation, don't get me wrong. Great to having, when you're balancing the different cups. But yeah, those are kind of some things I enjoyed and disliked about this attacking group.
Yeah. So, I think Tati is so representative of this Lazio side, both good and bad. Right? This was a side that we both said in our preseason predictions that it was going to now be a side that revolved around team. That gone are the days of a Cheeto Immobile bagging 20 to 30 goals. This was going to have to be a team effort, because we knew the limitations of Tati, but what he does so well, link up, fighting, dropping back, yada, 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 right? And we love those things. We appreciate those things. But I think now 2 seasons that he's, this season primarily led the line himself, last year shared, but now we have enough of a sample size to know that we cannot be the type of club that we should be, and we should be aspiring to be, with Tati being that number 9. Like, he can't be our go-to game in and game out. I think he can be an important part of the project. I think he can play a very critical role. I think he can play enough minutes. But he was a player, again, 14 goals is what you predicted, and 10 is just not good enough in Serie A. He had the same amount of goals as Pedro with double the minutes. Pedro, 1,087 minutes and 6 starts. I'll say that again. He had 1,087 minutes, 6 starts. Tati, 2,394 minutes, 28 starts.
And
Same amount of goals.
And he also had 15 big misses, big chances missed.
Exactly. So Pedro.
And to be fair, I'm going to be a classic coach these days. But I did say that Tati did have 14 expected goals. So he should have had 14 goals. So I'll win. I got a spot on.
Yeah. But look, here's the thing. Tati, to his credit, 3rd in the league in expected goals.
Wow.
But
yeah,
he was also one of the top players in most big chances missed.
Yeah.
Pedro, 2nd in Serie A in goals per 90. 2nd in the league, only behind one man, Retegui. He had 0.83 goals per 90. Retegui, incredible season. Capocannoniere, 0.94. Tati, 18th on that list.
Yeah.
18th. Our starting striker, 18th in Serie A in goals per 90. That is simply not good enough. In fact, Dia, who I had predicted to be our top goal scorer, not that he had a good season by any stretch either, but Dia had the most non-penalty goals. He had 9 goals. His 9 goals were all from run of play. So yes, Tati had more goals by 1, but Tati also had 2 pens. Yeah. And so simply not good enough. But the failures for us don't just come from that number 9 position. Goals had to come from elsewhere. And we simply weren't scoring from the midfield. And as much as we both love Guendouzi and Rovella, in order for them and in order for us as a side to take that next step, we have to have midfielders that score goals. Here is another interesting stat for you. Gigot had more goals than Rovella and Guendouzi combined.
Yep. What about Romagnoli?
What about combined?
What about Romagnoli?
Romagnoli had more goals than them. Yeah. 3 times as many goals as them. It's simply unacceptable. We have to be able to find goals from elsewhere, right? Milinkovic-Savic, a 10 goal scorer season in and season out. And it was really a frustration when you think about how often in matches we would get presented with goal scoring opportunities, whether it was Tati or Isaacson or whoever, and we wouldn't convert. And how often, Caleb, did we see ourselves get punished on the other end? And it was like, come on, guys, you're going to miss a chance on one end, not play defense on the others.
Exactly. Especially against those big teams.
So we know how important it is to score first, to come in and really punish sides. And we simply did not have that clinical killer instinct in the box, apart from a few times this season. And really, I know you mentioned Zaccagni, really the only player that I ever felt like this was a guy coming in to kill things off, to find a goal, to pull us up by the bootstraps was Pedro.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Aside from that, it just felt like everybody else was really lethargic. So, all right, next one. Preseason predictions. We had our assist totals. You had your top assists man as Zaccagni with 8 assists. I couldn't have been more wrong with my selection. Castrovilli with 8 assists.
Wait, now, did he play on the team? Was he a player?
How long was the season that Castrovilli
was a part
of this side? Incredible, right? So to our credit, one thing we were right about was the number of assists, 8, which was Nuno Tavares. Incredible start to the season, set the league on fire. We mentioned at the top of the pod, claims that he was the best left back in the world. And you know what? He was for a stretch. I'll always remember. Rest in peace to the time when Nuno was the top left back in the world. Gone are those days. Time. My man's barely finds himself on the field. So
thinking about it, my happiness levels during this season have been directly correlated to how good Tavares has been. If Tavares is an absolute killer a game, I tend to enjoy that game a lot more, and the team tends to win, and I'm happier. When Tavares is bad, vibes.
He's the Ferrari. He is the keys to the side, and I think when you really look at when did it all go wrong for Lazio, rewind, take a look. It's when Nuno was gone, and all of a sudden that dynamism, that really powerful, that X factor, that player that just put everybody on notice, all of a sudden was gone, was hampered. He was no longer a Ferrari. He was a Fiat running on empty. And it really killed us. It killed us. So, that was a time to be alive. And if we could ever get him back to form, I don't know, whether we sell him, whether we keep him. I would love to keep him. Financially, I don't know if somebody comes in with an offer, you have to more than
He's on.
consider it.
Is his loan a absolute have to buy
I think
or
so. Yeah.
forced
I
to
think
buy or
so.
option to
And if
buy?
it's not, if I'm mistaken, I believe it's a obligation. But if it is a club option, there's no way we don't trigger it because it is so affordable. It would be stupid
Yeah, it's
not
like
to.
I think it's like
So
6 mil
yeah,
or
and look, he's
something
an
like
important
that.
player. He's an important player, right? But he is a player that we know now we cannot rely on. So we'll do a whole pod and we'll talk about transfer market and we'll go into that. But obviously, a position that we'll need to ensure that there is some depth in across both of our flanks, across both of our outside back positions. So, but we were both wrong on that. You were closer to being right than I was because Zaccagni was our number 2 assist man with 6 assists. And then you've got Luca Pellegrini with 4 assists. So crazy to say that our top 2 of 3 assist men this season did come from the left back position. So
It's also like, that used to be like a Felipe Anderson, Alberto, were the guys that were topping these. It just kind of shows you that the attacking quality, the outpush is not there.
100%. Yep. Breakout player. You had predicted that Pellegrini would have a breakout season.
Hey!
So hats off because our boy Pellegrini, I thought, particularly in that second half, right? It was almost a disastrous selection because he was out of the side, he was out of the squad, and then I thought he redeemed himself quite nicely to be a pretty important player. My prediction, it was another nod for Castrovilli. I thought he would be a breakout player. I thought he would get his career back on track, and it just didn't work. We didn't see him enough. He was injured. We were light on midfielders, so I really thought that he was going to get the opportunity to shine, particularly with Baroni and a more open attack, but just never happened for him. So I was dead wrong there. MVP, you had Zaccagni, I had Mario Gila. Talk about 2 guys that had pretty good seasons and pretty great seasons at the first half, like much of our Lazio side, but really tailed off. I don't know who to say was kind of closer with that pick between you and I.
I think it's pretty even. I think both of them at some point look like, all-star, best 11 contenders, but then kind of fell off, I think, a bit at the end of the season there.
Yeah, and it was really disappointing. Zaccagni, started that first half really, really strong. Another fine season. We thought we were going to get big things out of him, and hampered by injury, to be fair. But with Gila, he had moments later in the season that he just looked like maybe his mind was elsewhere. I don't know if he's thinking about a move to La Liga or the Premier League. And then he had some bounce back moments, but last game of the season just kind of tough. So both of those guys very clearly not, at least for us, our MVPs of the season. And we'll talk a little bit about some of our award winners. So let's hold our MVP talk for this 24-25 campaign, Caleb. Let's start on the more negative side. We will start. We've got 2 categories. We've got most disappointing.
Okay.
Then we've got Bidone, and then we'll talk about our breakout player and our MVP. So,
okay.
But I guess real quick, let's talk about. I think you and I, we'll just keep this really brief because you and I had the same prediction for where Lazio would land in the table.
Yeah,
we both had Lazio falling at 7.
Mm-hmm.
Both dead on. Unfortunately, both dead on in that prediction. The Serie A table finishes with Napoli, of course, winning the Scudetto, Inter, Atalanta, Juve as your top 4 in Champions League, Roma, Fiorentina as the final 2 European spots, and then Lazio right outside of that picture with Milan, Bologna, and then a surprising Como at 10. So Um, Unfortunately, we both were kind of on the nose there with that one. So let's talk about our bidone. No, sorry. Let's talk about most disappointing player, because our most disappointing and bidone, two different categories. Most disappointing is going to be player that, we came into this some expectations behind them, and ultimately, didn't hit those expectations. Versus our bidone is just straight trash. The worst player of this season on this Lazio side. Caleb, give me your most disappointing player this season.
Disappointing for me was definitely Noslin. Noslin had 8 goals, 4-3, 4 to 5 assists, and just one half of Serie A last season. He came in the first half of Serie A, scored about 8 goals under Baroni at Verona, and I was like, oh man, this is a guy who's coming in with experience already with the coach. Already had his kind of first 4 or 5 months in the league. There's no need to adapt. And oh my goodness, I really thought he was going to be a key player for us. I thought for a fact that he would take over the right wing spot over Saxon. He would come in and really be quite a threat, and really a brand new type of threat. Like Nolson is a very different player than that of a Tati, as a Kanye, even a Dia. So he was easily my biggest disappointment because I thought he was set up the best to succeed.
Yeah, that's a good one. In my list of players, my cluster of players who I was debating between, Noslin was in that group. The another one that was in that group was Provedel. We obviously are a far cry from the Provedel we saw a couple seasons ago, where he was the Serie A keeper of the season. Saw a bit of a dip last year, but I thought goalkeeper was the last position we would have to be concerned with. I thought we would have some stability there, and a number of games we dropped this season simply because of goalkeeper errors and not being up to snuff. Real big frustration too with Baroni not making the change sooner. Where would we have finished in the table had Baroni made that change sooner? So big disappointment there. But for me, where I think about my preseason predictions and assists and breakout players, I have to give it to Castrovilli. Like, the man didn't even make it through the season. So most disappointing to me. I really had high hopes for him in a Lazio shirt, and obviously we did not get any of that. So most disappointing. Bidone. I'll kick this one off. Bidone, for me, Chauna. And it's pretty simple. He was a player that I know you and I were both really high on. Pedigree. I remember us talking about him during the Mercato, and once he was signed, we did our analysis. We did a little scouting report. Everything from his time at the youth level with France and being a key player in major competitions at the youth level, and his experience in Serie A. He was a player that had it just seemed he was out of his depth. He just seemed like he wasn't a footballer, he was a man without a position. If you played him out on the wing, didn't know what to do. If you played him up top, didn't know what to do. So many brain dead moments. I think about the derby, and it was, just stuff that make you go mad. And so for me, Chauna Bidone of the season. Who was yours?
You know what? For me, it's gonna go to Provedel. And you know how much I gave Provedel a lot of crap before he got benched. And I have Provedel because when I look back and think on results in matches, I think I can specifically think of several occasions where results would literally change had Provedel just been decent that day. According, FOTBob ratings, take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes the ratings are good. Every single site has their own way to rate players. But he was also our third lowest rated player, according to FOTMob. And
who were our top two?
Huh?
Who were our top two?
Nelson and Shauna were the least rated players. And the reason I didn't go for, I already said Nelson already, but Provedel coming in is, again, I don't think any other player had more direct impact on goals conceded directly than Provedel. I genuinely think that some of these draws that we gotten, losses that we've gotten, could have been shifted into either wins or draws themselves, had he not been on the pitch. And in addition to that, he has higher expectations. Shaun is still 20 years old. Provedel won goalkeeper of the year. Provedel was our guy. We did not sell him because we trusted in him. He came into the season and he was just an incredible disappointment. But on top of that, there's a reason he got benched. And it was later than what I would liked. But you if you lose your spot as a starting goalkeeper, one that has as much leeway and grace that Provedel got, you got to be down there. So it's got to be Provedel. And yeah, he's just, he was also statistically one of the worst keepers in all of Serie A. Yeah, when it comes to statistics. And so I always try to see, okay, what I'm feeling again, does it match some of the stats, and everything aligned on that front. So Provedel is my team Bidone of the season.
Yeah. It's you're not wrong, man. Again, a long cry from his Serie A goalkeeper of the season performance that we saw in that first full year with him. Long cry of a player that had earned his spot into the national team, and now he sits behind Mandas, which we can be a little bit hopeful about a future with Mandas. So, Caleb, give me your breakout player of this season. Who comes into this season and surprised you and over exceeded expectations that you had?
Um, unfortunately, honestly, not too many players did that. I felt that I was disappointed a lot more often than not with the new signings, Castrovilli, Noslin, even a Saxon coming into the season. But I think my breakout player of the year that really surprised me, I think it had to be Tavares, even though he had a bad stretch. I know I said Pellegrini was my prediction for the season, and I think very much he was probably, if I can just gain, like, okay, coming at the end of the season, who's someone that I trust more, that I, has really earned a spot or a new respect for me. Pellegrini has done that. But if you talk about someone that just came in and just kind of blew expectations, was Tavares. I had zero expectations as Tavares. And he came out and had that first season, and even at the end of the season when he wasn't as good, he was still giving defenders trouble. He was still causing damage. He was unfortunate with the injuries. I would love to see how his season would have gone without the constant nag of injuries. So when he would come in, he would be a little sloppy. But for me, it's got to be Tavares. And I think that's just a breakout year for him across the world. The only people who knew who Tavares was were Arsenal fans who loaned him and some of the other random teams he's been on. But I think for the first time in Tavares' career, he really became someone that was like, wait a second, who's this guy on Lazio? He's getting assists left and right. So for me, he made a name for himself this season, despite the sort of lapse there at the end of the season. But for that reason, he's my breakout player of the year.
Well, it's a good one, and he definitely was on trend to be that for me. But I can't take away the second half and how it closed out. However, when I think about expectations and where we landed, my breakout player of the year was Pedro. Pedro was a man many Laziali were calling for him to leave the club. They wanted to banish this man. They were calling for his head, right? The receipts are out there. And we're talking about a player last season who had 1 goal and 1 assist in 33 matches. In his last 2 combined seasons, he had 5 goals, 4 assists. This season, 10 goals. 10 goals. He was our leading goal scorer, as we covered. He was the second in the league in goals per 90.
38-year-old breakout player. 38, yeah.
38-year-old breakout player. But the expectations coming in were very low. We weren't sure if this player should retire, and we all want to bring him back. I want to see him next year, right? Like, he was so critical to us. So for me, He's my breakout player. And rolling this into MVP talk, he was also my most valuable player. So the breakout and my MVP of this season. Now, when I take a step back and I think about this MVP, it's slightly different than my most important player. For me, the most important player on this Lazio side is Rovella. I believe everything he does. I believe he's the backbone of this team. When we saw what we were like without him, there were a ton of problems. He is asked to do a lot, particularly on the defensive side. We would both like to see him placed in positions where he can rack up more of those assists, and he needs to find his goal scoring touch. But I think he is the most important player, but the most valuable player this season was Pedro. I mean, we're talking about a guy who is bagging goals, clutch goals in Europa, game winners, coming off the bench and salvaging points individually by himself, pulling this sides from the depths of hell to salvage points. He was my most valuable player. Pedro, who'd you have?
I'm going to go, for me, the MVP of this season was Romagnoli. I think, when I think of backbone, Romagnoli is right there in that conversation of, hey, everything else could be going crazy around us, but at least we can rely on him in the back. I think Baroni tried maybe every single possible combination for backline this season on several different occasions, where there was Patrick at one time, Gila, Tavares, Pellegrini, Hisai, Lazzari. Every single person was rotated in and out, but who was the one player that was never, ever brought out? Who was never rotated? Alessio Romagnoli. That's who.
And he bagged a couple goals for us in Serie A and Europa.
Not only was he an absolute unit in the defensive line, a stable, consistent presence that we always had there, a leader. He also came up clutch with some of these corner goals that he scored. I mean, for center backs, he was in the 97th percentile of goal scoring center backs in all the top 5 leagues. Just a complete menace on the corners, contributing where he can, really taking it on himself. Like, you know what, I may be a center back, but when I go up there, I'm going to do my part and put this team on my back and score a goal to bail us out here. And so for that reason, Romagnoli was my most valuable player, because when I think about the team, for me, he's irreplaceable with anyone else that we have on the side right now.
Yeah, I like it. Obviously, you know how much I think of Romagnoli and how important he is. It would be devastating for this side to lose him, not only because of the caliber player he is, how consistent he was in a very inconsistent season for Lazio, but he's a Laziale. And just, I personally, for years, had dreamed of him coming to his boyhood club, the club that he loved. And for that to happen was awesome. It was such a great feeling. And, we went from a side that had a number of Laziali to now, between losing Cataldi, who may or may not come back, losing Romagnoli would suck, man. And it would leave a big hole, and center backs of that quality aren't easy to find. And you think about a side like Milan, who has been a dumpster fire, right? And who do they win a Scudetto with as their captain? Romagnoli. And I know a lot of Milanisti that would love to see him back because of that consistent play. So I like it. It's a great shout. Important player. I hope Lazio do everything they can to do right by him, keep him at the club. But yeah, it's going to be fun following along, if anything, with this Mercato madness. We know, there's going to be a lot to discuss. Quick pulse check, Caleb, as we get ready to close out this pod. The elephant in the room is going to be all of the manager talk. I just want to throw out the list of candidates, and I want you to give me your rank order, top to bottom, who you want as your Lazio manager. the candidates currently being floated out there. Please correct me if I'm wrong or insert anybody I may have missed.
Okay.
You got Sarri, Conceição, Closa, Paladino. Missing anybody?
I don't think so. I think that's it.
Okay. So between those 4 names, and not even that.
Gattuso. Is he still
Gattuso was
rumored?
linked. Yep, Gattuso was a name thrown out there. So let's go with those 5.
You said Vieira already, right?
No, Viera is another one. So
Yeah,
okay, I'll be honest. Let's do this because I do not. We can keep Paladino in there. Who knows? I don't know that that's even a realistic one.
Let's just take it from our opinion. In our best case scenario world,
Okay.
who are we
Rank
getting?
them. Rank in realistic best case, because I don't want to hear you say Diego Simeone because
No.
obviously
Just the options you said. Just the options you said.
Let's go. Let's hear.
I think both of us can agree on Conceição.
Yep, 100%. That's my number one.
Laziale through and through. Still proud to be a Laziale. He is now unemployed, so give him a call, Lutito. My second option is Paladino. Did some great work at Fiorentina, but they really screwed him over with kind of always threatening to sack him, even though he was overperforming the team. Anyways, it was a mess. So also unemployed. And then my third option is Sadi. Those would be my top 3: is Conceição first, Paladino second, Sadi number 3 on this list. Number 4 would be, Gattuso's not even on my list. I don't want anything to do with Gattuso. He's not even on my list. I'm not even gonna bother ranking him. I'm gonna go Vieira 4, Klose 5.
Okay, I would go Closa above Viera only for the vibes.
I respect that. I respect that.
Yeah. But that's probably the only difference in my list. I think it's a clear Conceição and Paladino, but we'll spend some time on this. I'll say kind of my gut reaction when Sadi was announced as a very real, and it will get closer and closer, and this is going to continue to steamroll as we approach this answer. Apparently there's a deal on the table, and we'll see what it looks like, but we'll have our instant reactions. But my gut reaction there was I didn't love it. I didn't hate it.
Yeah, same.
So, all right, folks. Well, topsy-turvy season. Expect nothing less than that when it comes to Lazio. It's been a lot of fun, Caleb. Another season doing this podcast. Big things for us. We've joined a network of podcasts called the Hooligans Network that is going to help us pump this podcast out on a number of different channels. If you are a Laziale, first and foremost, subscribe, please. YouTube is our primary channel, but we are available on all audio formats. If you just love Serie A, Calcio, football, soccer, whatever, please show us some love, subscribe, give us those 5-star ratings. It helps this podcast get noticed. But whether we're talking to a community of 1 or 1,000, Caleb, sempre.